All right, y'all. So today we're going to talk about Eastern Europe. Um, and remember, yesterday we kind of went through Northern Europe, and it's very much like a story of Great Britain or England kind of being beat up on, and then finally like becoming powerful. And we know today that they've actually gotten out of the European Union. They've left the European Union because they were like, we don't want you guys dragging us down. So they pieced out of there. Um, Eastern Europe, kind of like Northern Europe, a little bit weird. Some different stuff kind of going on. And it's because Eastern Europe's pretty like new. A lot of the countries are fairly new countries. They weren't there forever. They haven't been there like since the beginning of time. Like France, it seems like has been in Europe forever. So a couple of things that we're gonna look at is one, the cultural diversity that kind of exists there. There's tons and tons of different ethnic groups, and that can be a really cool thing, but that can also be like a really, really bad thing in the sense of, people are fighting each other a lot. People are thinking my ethnic group is better than your ethnic group because of this or because of some other stupid reason, or my ethnic group should get to live here and yours shouldn't. So a lot of problems have kind of resulted from that. And you've had an issue of like, they don't really know how to govern. And they haven't governed themselves for a really long time because this region of Europe has been taken over by empire after empire, and not always a European empire, as we'll see. So should be pretty interesting. So we'll start it up. You can go ahead on your map. This is the last one. We'll kind of shade in. Shade in that blue for Eastern Europe. So kind of Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary is our border countries. You can shade in Russia and I don't even think barely any of Turkey, but you can shade that in as well. But that's going to be our Eastern European countries, and kind of look over here at all these teeny, teeny, tiny ones. That's going to be where we see a lot of the problems. That's where we see a lot of struggles kind of occur because they're not always there or somebody else is controlling them. And I don't know about y'all, but if somebody's telling me what to do, I don't want to do it. That's just kind of how it goes. I'm not feeling it. So take a couple moments, shade those in, finish going through them, and we'll talk about them. All right, so hopefully you have them shaded in. That shouldn't have taken you too long. It doesn't have to be a perfect job, just as long as you see. And now you should have maps from every day that we've done that has Southern Europe, and then Western Europe, and then Northern Europe, and then Eastern Europe. So real quick, you have an idea of kind of what you're talking about, what countries you're talking about. It's just another map, same countries, just colored in a little bit different way. So something important to think about with this region, and I'm going to go right back to the map that we were at. It's kind of an intersection between two continents. So we've got like the edge of Europe over here, and we've got the edge of Asia over here, and we also have Africa. Can't see it, but Africa, the continent, is down here. And so got a lot of different cultural influences, and we got a lot of different people kind of fighting over this land. So like the Europeans are like, well, we want that. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire from Asia is like, well, we'd like that too. And so they're constantly fighting over that land. And that's going to make it a very diverse place and also a very kind of culturally rich place. And a place with a variety of cultures kind of going on. And that's still very true today. And when we talk about those states, those countries, we're talking about places like Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina. We had a little trouble saying that in 7th period the other day. Bulgaria, Croatia, Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, Macedonia. That's actually where Alexander the Great, he was like Alexander of Macedonia, remember? Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Yugoslavia. Those are all of our Eastern European countries, and those are all going to be places that we see are weak in some ways at some point in history because they do have so many different people living there, and so many different people kind of living there, and different people who want to control it. So kind of keep that in mind, because a lot of their problems, even today, kind of come from those things. Moving on to like who actually got control, because I'm just said like countries are fighting for it. Well, who gets control of it? So if we're talking like way, way back in the day, it's part of the Roman Empire. So Rome basically has this region, nobody kind of messes with Rome, and so nobody's really touching it. What we'll see is after the Roman Empire kind of goes downhill, the Byzantine Empire controls it. So still European Empire, yay, Europe has it. But then the Ottoman Empire, which is also known as the Muslim Empire, they're going to come into Europe and take this land, and it's like, what? What just happened? And so we're going to see a weird situation where like Ottomans are in control of a region in Europe, or Muslims are in control of a region in Europe, and that's never really been a thing before. So what you're going to see happen is all the countries get together, a lot of the Eastern European countries, Austria, Poland, the little nations around them, they're like, all right, we got to get rid of the Ottoman Empire. Like, they got to go because this is our land. And so we're going to see that they push out the Ottomans. They kind of push them right to the edge of like where Turkey is today, that tiny little piece that creeps into Europe. And Austria is basically like going to take the victory. They're like, yay, we won. And everybody else is like, well, we helped. And Austria's like, no, it was all us. So Austria is going to take all that land. They actually become Austria-Hungary, the Empire of Austria-Hungary. But what we're going to see happens, y'all, is Austria is going to constantly be dealing with problems because they did take that land. And they've got so many different groups living in that land who want different things, who don't really want to be Austrian, right? Like, if, all of a sudden, I don't know, let's say something terrible happens, the unspeakable, like University of South Carolina just takes over everything, that doesn't make me, who graduated from Clemson, that doesn't make me a Gamecock fan. That doesn't make someone who, went to UNC a Gamecock fan. That doesn't make, someone who went to University of Florida a Gamecock fan, right? So Austria coming in, taking over, that doesn't make Serbians or Slavs or any of those other people Austrians. They're not going to feel like Austrians. They're not going to feel included. They're not like them. What we are going to see, as well as this region goes, Austria becomes more powerful. Prussia, which is kind of like Germany today, becomes more powerful, and Russia's always kind of been big and somewhat powerful. So they decide one day, you know what we would like? More land. And you know who has more land? That country right in the middle of us, Poland. And they just split it up. They partition Poland. That just means to break it up and take control of a certain part. So again, this is kind of where your Ottoman Empire is over here. They're always here, like kind of pressuring Europe. Well, they come in and they're all the way up here. They've got all this land. And that's when Austria and Poland and Lithuania over here are like, all right, guys, let's go. We got to take them out. So they push them all the way back here. And Austria's like, well, this is ours now. And then in 1700s, this is where you're going to see Russia, Prussia, and Austria decide, we each get a piece of Poland because we deserve it. Poznan, that was actually one of the cities I got to go to this summer. Same thing with Warsaw, and then Krakow is somewhere over here, somewhere really far. So what we're going to see is all the problems between all these tiny little nations are going to just start boiling up and boiling up. And these little nations are going to start getting more and more annoyed with the Ottomans on their right and the Austrians who are supposedly controlling them. And it's not fun to kind of be controlled by another country because you don't get to experience a lot of the same freedoms. And so they've had enough. Countries like Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, they're like, we're going up against the Ottomans, we're shutting them down, and they defeat them, like, against all odds, y'all. They beat the Ottomans, and they're finally like, yes, we're gonna be independent. Well, Austria's like, no, you're not. Nah, that's not gonna happen. And so what we're gonna see goes on is Austria kind of takes control, but we've got this thing called Balkanization going on. See that right there? The really bolded one must mean that's important. Balkanization is basically when you have one big region and it's really just broken up into small groups that probably don't like each other, small groups that don't want to be a part of this bigger region. People kind of want to be doing their own things. The reason it's called Balkanization is because this is the area that countries like Serbia and Greece and Bulgaria and Croatia and Yugoslavia, that's the region that they're in. That's called the Balkans. So when you have a bunch of small groups, small maybe states in a region and they don't really get along and they don't want to be a part of that bigger unit. And so what we're going to see kind of becomes the case is, and I'm going to click to this right here, and I'll go back, is Serbia becomes independent, right? So they're, kind of independent from Austria-Hungary, but they're like, hey, it's not fair that you've got all these other regions because we think that should be our land. And we don't really like that you have control of these people who are Slavs because they're more like us. They'd rather be Serbian than they would Austrian. And so what we're going to see happen is a Serbian terrorist group. They actually called themselves the Black Hand. They're setting out on this mission to free the Slavs in Austria-Hungary and basically take over that Slavic land. And so this terrorist group's kind of willing to do anything that they can to accomplish what they want, to get what they want. So they decide they're going to kill the future leader of Austria-Hungary, this guy named Archduke Franz Ferdinand. They're going to go assassinate him, and basically they think if they do that, Austria is just going to be like, oh, okay, you can have the land. But that's just not what happens. They go and kill this guy, and it starts up World War I, which they probably didn't think was going to happen, but yeah, you kind of messed up there, Black Hand. You maybe shouldn't have done that. Here is, again, this same map, which kind of shows this Balkanization. So you've got all these little tiny areas in this region. We don't want to be a part of Austria-Hungary, right? That's not where we want to be. That's not who we are. Here's a depiction of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. That's his wife, Sophie. She was shot and killed as well. This little video to kind of show brief happenings of that day. Definitely not a good day.
7 young Bosnian Serbs, who were part of the nationalist Black Hand, planned to assassinate Franz Ferdinand. heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary.
When Franz Ferdinand, also when he went out, y'all, he thought maybe something bad might happen. These Serbians don't like me, and so he threw on a bunch of Lucky Charms, and this jacket that he's wearing was supposed to have been bulletproof, but yeah, wasn't.
The first attempt failed when a bomb was thrown at his car. He missed, and the conspirator was arrested. As the car carrying the Archduke went...
So they're like, ah, snap, plan failed. They go and kind of meet up, and the Black Hand's like, well, what do we do now? And this one dude is like, I'm going to go get a sandwich because I'm hungry.
Down an alternate route, Gavrilo Princip happened to be there. He shot and killed both Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. This caused a crisis where Austria declared war on Serbia, and in response, Russia declared war on Austria. Other nations, obliged by their alliances, joined in, bringing the outbreak of the First World War.
And remember, I said that's going to be something that we talk about more. We'll talk about more the First World War, Second World War. We're going to kind of highlight those. Kind of starting this week, next week. Something really, really tragic. So this guy right here, Gavrilo Princip, the dude who shot them, he actually had tuberculosis. That's like when you cough up blood, and it's like a death sentence, especially in 1914. So he kind of had nothing to lose. Franz Ferdinand's wife, Sophie, was actually pregnant. And so he killed Franz Ferdinand, his wife Sophie, and their unborn child. So very, very tragic situation. And of course, that becomes World War I, and we'll talk about kind of why it happens like that in a bigger way. What we're going to see is Austria-Hungary finds themselves on the, I guess, wrong side or the losing side in World War I. And when the Central Powers lose, that's Austria-Hungary, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire, Austria-Hungary is forced to split into two separate countries. So that's where we get our little chicken leg Austria and our Hungary country next to it. We'll see that Poland comes back. They become Poland again. They're not under the control of anybody else. Countries like Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Albania, they all become independent nations. But what we're going to see is for some of these countries, independence doesn't last that long. So for Poland, you're Poland for 20 years. And then you're just not anymore. And what we're going to see is in 1939, Germany, kind of under the direction of Adolf Hitler, they've been building up their military. And in 1939, they invade Poland and just very quickly take control of it. And that invasion starts up World War II. We'll see the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan are going to lose in World War II. But what we see out of World War II kind of becomes the Soviet Union, and communism kind of dominates this region of the world. So Russia takes the opportunity to kind of take control in Eastern Europe after the Second World War. And they're basically like, hey, welcome to the Russian Empire, whether you want to be or not. And so again, this region's like, but we don't want to be under someone else's control. Well, too bad. It kind of just stinks for this region that they have to continue to deal with other people kind of ruling them and deciding what's best for them. And this is what we're going to see happen. So, like, this right here is the Soviet Union, like, post World War II, and they're like, hey, you, Poland, you, East Germany, so part of Germany, you, Czechoslovakia, you, Hungary, you, Romania and Bulgaria, you guys are all a part of this, whether you want to be or not. And the people in these countries kind of didn't have a say. Yugoslavia is kind of weird. They didn't really join anybody. Albania kind of got out. And then all these blue places are like, hey, this isn't cool. And think about, this is very much the divide on our maps. Like, this is Northern Europe, Western Europe, and then kind of Mediterranean Europe. Everybody else is like, hey, we think communism is maybe not the bomb, and we don't think it's the bomb that you're kind of controlling them and saying they have to, you know, have communism. Well, what we'll see happen, or what kind of goes down, is from the Second World War, which ends in 1945, up until like the late 1980s, this right here, that's still the case. This is still the situation. Until things just get so bad, and like that red region just gets so far behind, and Eastern Europe gets so far behind that the leader of Russia is like, you know what, guys, like, we gotta give it up. Like, we're trying to control these places. We're trying to say, like, communism is the best thing, and, you know, we're just weak right now. And this just isn't good for us. And so what we're going to see is 1989, the Soviet Union just is like, all right, we got to give it up. We got to just let all these Eastern European nations go. Sorry guys, that's my dog chewing on a toy. What we'll see is when that ends, it's kind of the same situation all over again. Like, our countries are weak and they don't really know where to go being free, and where to go, you know, with nobody kind of controlling them. Well, what kind of government do we have? And so we see a lot of problems kind of continue. In Yugoslavia, a bunch of different ethnic groups are there, and so they have a massive killings going on and fighting going on. Same thing with Czechoslovakia. They've got fighting going on between the people who feel like there should just be a Czech Republic and the people who feel like, no, it should be Slovakia. So a lot of issues kind of coming out of that. We're actually going to talk about what this is, communism, kind of in greater detail when we talk about just Russia. So like, you'll notice we haven't been talking about Russia that much, or like Russia in depth. That's going to be because we talk about Russia and the states around it, the countries around it, kind of by themselves, because they're doing their own thing for a while. You know, up until the late 1980s, they're kind of doing their own thing because Russia feels like it. But you can see, like, if we're comparing, you know, what used to be communist, all these red states, versus today, obviously big difference, big change, and that happened in just a few years. Finally, the last couple of things we're going to talk about, present day issues, present day kind of problems going on. So what you're going to see is when you get rid of communism, the economy is really, really weak because communism kind of hides weakness. Like the government controls everything, and you kind of tell everybody everything's going well. We've got plenty of goods. We're doing okay. Even when you're not doing okay. So that's going to be a bad situation. And typically another thing that's true with like communist countries is they're a little bit dirty, a little bit grody. They've got a lot of like industries, industrializing going on, which means a lot of pollution. And we're maybe not so worried with everything looking nice, but working nice. And again, we're going to kind of delve into communism and what that means, and is it a good thing or a bad thing or somewhere in between or just neither. We'll delve into that in a couple of weeks. What we start seeing is a movement away from what's going to be kind of a controlled economy, so the government makes decisions, if y'all remember that, to after 1989 when the Berlin Wall comes down, when countries are moving away from communism. We see this movement toward a market economy, right? So market economy, the consumer gets to decide what they want. We see a movement toward people owning stuff, right? But even these things that are kind of good for economies weren't fixing the problem. And so you had inflation where prices were going up. You had people who were unemployed and they're not making any money. So what are they going to do? We'll see some strategies kind of help. So like cutting the cost in some cases, or bettering production, producing more stuff. Maybe using less money, saving some money. And you have this situation of when you're kind of like stuck in communism or stuck in like a certain type of government for a while, you use the same stuff and you don't trade with the rest of the world who maybe has more advanced stuff. And so places like Albania or Romania, they have old stuff. And so it's like, how do I keep up with some place that is killing it? How do I keep up? How do I keep going? And so very old equipment, not a lot of stuff to work with, very few people who are educated. Romania just don't have any money for the most part. Just everyday Romanians don't have a lot of money. It's actually in these, CNN 10 did a story about this, y'all, and it's in countries like Albania, Romania, Bulgaria that you get like a lot of your fake news. So like if you've ever seen a headline that's like, I don't know, something weird, like a lot of times about like politicians, like Donald Trump does this. And, he does some crazy stuff sometimes, but like it's like super far-fetched. Or same thing with like Hillary Clinton. She does some crazy stuff sometimes, but like it would be outrageous things that they were doing. Those places produce a lot of that news, a lot of that fake news, because they make a lot of money that way, and they don't make money in kind of more traditional ways, or they have fewer opportunities to make money. So that's kind of interesting. If y'all remind me, maybe on Friday this week, we can watch about that. It's pretty cool. I think y'all will like it. So we have seen kind of in recent years, this is fuzzy, but we have seen the GDPs in Poland and Hungary go up, but Bulgaria and Albania, they're still kind of like hanging on. They're like slowly going up, but it'd be nicer if it was like this situation, and they're kind of like, why can't we be like them? Some other things about this region. So remember, very, very diverse, a lot of different ethnicities. So a lot of different languages. And y'all, I will tell you, the people in this region, they don't know everybody's language. So, like, if I live in Austria, I do not know. And I would speak German in Austria. I do not know Hungarian. Hungarian's like a really hard language to learn. Or if I live in Germany and I speak German, I do not know Polish. Or if, I speak Greek, I don't know, Bulgarian just because I'm right beside him. So you still have the whole unification problem. Like, these countries are probably never going to really be best friends, and they kind of have still, like, some lingering issues between each other, kind of like lingering hatred for some other countries. Main religions in this region, you've got Catholicism, so like Roman Catholicism, coming out of the Roman Empire, coming out of Rome, and that's that influence from kind of Italy. And you also have Eastern Orthodox, which is kind of influence from the Byzantine Empire. Eastern Orthodox is going to be a lot of this region. It's going to be a lot of Russia as well. Not that many Protestants, not that many Muslims, at least compared to the Christian groups. Poland is actually the most, I guess I'm saying this right, most Christian country in the world, or maybe most religious country in the world. They have the most people who identify as Christians and who like attend church services regularly. So that's kind of a cool thing. You do have very few Jews in this region because the Holocaust killed a large number. Half of those 6 million Jews were from Poland. A lot of the other members of that Jewish population who were killed in the Holocaust were from this Eastern European region. And after World War II, a lot of them are going to immigrate to Israel or immigrate even to the United States because this wasn't really a place that they were welcome. Jews haven't ever really been welcome in Europe. And if you have questions about that, we can talk about that. But there's been a lot of instances in history where, because somebody's Jewish, anywhere in Europe, they'll be like, get out of here. We don't want you here. We don't like you here. So it's not just the Holocaust where you see like that attitude of anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism is like hatred for Jews. Also have folk art, very important. I've got a video of a Czech folk dance that these little girls are performing that I actually got to see in the Czech Republic. Still very important tune, kind of in the same way that we would do like maybe a little festival or fair and you'd perform like a little dance. That's where you see a lot of the folk art, the folk dancing, music. You see all these influences from Chopin in Poland. A lot of our Czech composers, Austrian composers are going to be big. Wood carving is a really big thing, and their wood carvings are like so insanely intricate, y'all. Here is some Czech folk dancing. Oh, maybe not. Let's see. So that's just a very short little clip, but kind of cool, I think. Talking about modern Eastern Europe, pretty decent sized cities. Prague being a really big city, Budapest, or remember I said last week, at least the 7th period, Budapest is what they would call it in Hungary. Warsaw, Krakow in Poland. A lot of our cities in the Balkans are pretty decent size, and they're pretty old. And as far as like people living in these cities, it's a far fewer amount than live in like Rome. Remember that video we said like Rome's super hot, not only because of where they are, but like because there's so many people packed into that city. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, only about 40% of people live in cities. In Albania, only about 37 people. 37 people. Ugh. 37% of people live in cities. Sorry about that, guys. You will see kind of more urbanization, so like more people moving to cities, but that's gonna be a while, and that's also gonna cause some problems. So think like pollution will grow with that, traffic will increase, the temperature will probably increase, right? It becomes hotter with more cars, more exhaust, more pollution, housing problems, shortages. We've seen kind of today with modern life conflict in that we still have kind of like ethnic groups being like, we like our group and nobody else. And that kind of goes with nationalism, right? Like, we're better than you, or we like ourselves better than you. A lot of Serbians or Serbs still hate Croats, the people from Croatia, for helping out the Nazis in World War II. So still harboring a lot of hate in this region, and still kind of stuck on some grudges. And that can be a really bad thing, and that can be a really dangerous thing, you know? Here is in the Czech Republic, whenever I went, a couple of foods that were like the bomb, y'all. So I figured I'd show you some dancing, show you some delicious food. So the thing on the left, like, first it came out, this is called svichkova. Just like try and say that, svichkova. It's spelled S-V-I-K-O-V-A, svichkova. When it came out to me, I was like, oh my gosh, this looks gross. What did I order? But it's almost like it's like pot roast with, this is just like bread dumplings that have been made. I guess they think they just look like that, these ones, just because they made them look like that, but it's just bread dumplings. And then this is just like a vegetable gravy. It's literally it's like Thanksgiving on a plate. It was so good. And then this thing right here, this is almost like the Czech churro, guys. They wrap this dough around these things and just like sit it, and these things twirl over like wood fire, or wood flame, whatever it would be, and just slowly cook. And they just sprinkle these things with cinnamon sugar, and in some cases they'll put like ice cream inside. Really, really good. Figured I'd get you guys in third period ready for lunch, and get you guys in seventh period hungry to go home and eat some food. For some things going on today, a couple more things that have to do with kind of conflict. Still have a lot of discrimination against minorities. Still very, very anti-Semitic, not just in Eastern Europe, but a lot of Europe is very anti-Semitic. So they very much dislike Jews. You have in these regions people who would be like, yeah, the Holocaust, maybe it was bad, but it wasn't that bad. Who like try to, say that something like that is okay, or discriminating is okay, and we know that's not cool. Even though in the United States, something we do to all kinds of different groups of people, but that's hopefully we know in third and seventh period that that's not okay, right? Discrimination against a lot of gypsy people. We can talk about kind of what the gypsies are when I get back. They're an interesting group, like kind of an interesting story. Not exactly like I think they're made to be on like TV. And so you've got to think like for governments, for politicians, it's like kind of hard to deal with all these problems, and to deal with, not only do we have a bunch of different groups, but we have a bunch of different groups that like don't like each other. We have a bunch of different groups that like hate other nations around them and still are harboring grudges. And these politicians are trying to do things right. So they can't just be like a dictator and be like, well, here's how it's going to be. They're trying to follow the rules and they're trying to make their country a better place. Because, you know, if they don't, and if maybe they try to be a dictator, they're going to get, you know, they're going to lose. They're going to get in trouble for that. So they're going to have to answer, unlike some other people who have kind of risen up as dictators. That is where we're going to end today. We'll kind of break this down tomorrow. Remember, we're going to have our map test tomorrow, so review that. Review your Europe map. But we'll kind of break down this history and kind of go through and see what questions we have about things and how we feel about it in general. So can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. I know I'm recording this on Tuesday, so Tuesday of last week, but I know, be sure that I found something cool for you guys to bring back. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.